This, my friends, is Mikinzi Rambo. And she is a delightful woman who loves Jesus and loves her church and loves what God has called her to do, which is brand new for her because she just got ordained recently to be the youth pastor at Renewal City Church, and I'm so excited for you. Thanks. I'm excited about what God's doing in you,
I'm excited.
What he's going to do through you.
Yeah.
I'm excited about you discovering things that you never knew about yourself.
Yeah.
And how God has wired you just for this. And
Thanks.
So you're about ready to head into something you've never done before. Yeah. How do you feel about doing something you've never done before?
I mean, does anyone love going into something they've never done before? Maybe I'm alone, but I feel a little bit...
You got married at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, right? I guess there's that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nervous, but excited. I'm full-time now, so that was the difference, right? Is that I'm now full-time, I'm ordained. Those are changing. Just nervous, but very excited, ready to see what God has in this season. And I think a lot of times I can put hopes and dreams into things, but really when we're walking through, we're growing and we're seeing the goodness maybe after the fact. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when we're in the muck and all of it, it's hard to see, oh, God was there with me then. And so I know that there's going to be a good story at some point.
Yeah.
I just might be in the middle of the progress of the story.
No, that's
right
going
now.
to be a great story.
Yeah.
How do you you're going to grow as a leader. What do you think that's going to look like? What are you anticipating that growth looking like?
I think I'm really good at relying on myself, mm-hmm. which is a really bad trait too. I think I like to be the me show a lot of times because I know I can get things done. And so this next phase is really realizing that I need a team. Yeah. I need a group of people behind me and for my kids. We've got about 45 students, so a ratio of 1 to 45 just doesn't really play out well. Where if you have a team, you've got the relational needs are really being met across the board, mm-hmm. because we all need that back and forth, but our students really need us to be in their lives, not just on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So if we can have a team, I think that's where this growth is really going to happen, that I can have a team behind me, that it's not the me show. It's not Mikinzi Rambo's youth group. It's really, we call ourselves midweek. We're not even Renewal City Churches. That's how we roll though, because we don't even have our name on our building. We're just very much aloof.
If they find out we're a church,
great.
So what do you look for in a good person to build this team around? I mean, who are the people you want on your team? What do you want them to be like?
I really am looking for people that love teenagers.
Yeah.
And when I say love teenagers, a lot of times when I'm asking people, hey, would you want to come help? The response is really discouraging. A lot of times it's people saying, I hate teenagers, or being a teenager sucked, and you're going, what? You were a teenager once upon a time, which is maybe where the sentiments come from, of remembering how hard that time in life was.
Yeah.
It was rough. And we all have different years that were rough. Mine were middle school, rough. But I want people to see value in these kids. I want them to know, I've been there, I've done that, and there's life beyond. I think a lot of times our students are hearing not so great things. Maybe it's a lot of times, wait until you get older, it's going to be worse. Wait until you have to have a job. So it's all these wait untils that are worse than their place now. And they're going, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to, if it's worse now, life is hard and it gets worse. That's the encouraging sentiment we're hearing.
Thank you.
Is not great.
Yeah.
And I think we see that in like depression and suicidal rates. We're not aiding in those things by saying life gets worse, life sucks. So I want someone who sees value in these students and to validate where they're at.
Yeah.
To say, I see where you're at, and it's okay that you're feeling these feelings. Not to make an excuse for their feelings, but to say, I see you in them, because I think we're really bad at that. I also want people to realize that they need Jesus because we can't do it alone. And again, I'm a bad example of that because I am the one-man show a lot of times, but I really want my leaders for these students to lean into Jesus, because otherwise we just get burnt out.
Well, yeah, and you know your story.
Yeah.
Your life was changed by your relationship with Jesus.
Yep.
You needed him.
I needed him. Yep. Everything changed when I met Jesus.
In spite of the fact you feel really self-sufficient,
Yeah.
you needed Jesus in your life to be who you are.
Yeah. So I want leaders that do that, and then I want leaders that show up. This generation can tell when you're lying, when you're not doing what you say you'll do. And so I want someone who says, hey, I'll be at your game, and then they try to their best of their ability to be at that game.
Right.
I want students and leaders to have relationship Wednesday night is one night a week. Relationship is not built on one night a week. It's built in, I'm walking life with you. We expect kids to come to our program and then not be in their lives. That feels really backwards. I want leaders that are invested in these students' lives on more than just a Wednesday night where we say, come to our stuff and then never go to their stuff.
Right. You are one of the most hopeful people I know when it comes to the next generation. There are a lot of people who are not so hopeful about the next generation. They look at them and they've kind of written a description of them that isn't really fair. Part of it is because things have changed so much the last 10 or 20 years as far as our exposure to information. And I heard one leader say that when he grew up in northern Canada, and he said when he was trying to decide what he was going to do the rest of his life, it was either he was going to be like the policeman in town or the doctor in town or the lawyer in town. So he went to school to be a lawyer because that's all he knew. Or the farmer. You know, and so now kids, when they think about what they want to do with the rest of their life, the feeling really is anything's possible.
Anything,
That's overwhelming.
It is a very overwhelming thing.
Yeah, but you seem to have a lot of hope for this next generation. Where does that come from?
I think a lot of it is just being able to hear the stories and remember what it was like. Yes, times have changed, but not as much as we want to out that for. We want to have that be the easy out, that we don't understand this generation because they're in a whole new world. Yes, information is much more acceptable or accessible. Their phones are at their fingertips, but if we look at the underlying problems, they're the same. They're the same stuff that you and I went through, maybe just more on an elevated level. But the human condition is what it's always been. There's always been the same human condition because that's who we are. We're human. We just have new ways of expressing it and showing it. And so I think my hope comes from knowing that the only fix is Jesus, and Jesus is so big in relational value.
And he hasn't changed.
He hasn't changed.
He is still doing plan
forever. Yes.
Which is to have relationship with us, restore us.
And I tell my students all the time that the Jesus that I know, no matter if it was just one kiddo to save, if it was just to save you, he would do it. He would do it because that's how much value he sees in you. And I think that's what this generation is looking for. That's where my hope comes from, is that they would be able to gain the, wow, I matter. Because it says anything society, it's anyone can be anything, but then it's also really discouraging because we say you can be anything, and then they might not be anything. And so if we can say none of that is who you are, you're first a daughter or a son of God, that's the life-changing information that I want you to gain from this. And you have someone who loves you and sees you where you're at. That's my role. My role is just to be like, God is awesome. He's really epic. He loves you. But he also sent me to say, I love you. I love you and I care for you and I see what you're going through, and I can't fix it, but he can. He can. He
you
can
make
do
it sound so exciting. I want to be in your youth group. I want to be around you, Mikinzi. I want to see what you see and hear what you hear from God, because I think that so many people they think that God is just about working to try to perform. It's all about sin management. It's all about trying to be good enough so that he'll love you. And you actually believe that he loves us the way we are.
I read a book a couple years ago, Gay Girl, Good God. And it was Jackie Hill Perry. And some of you might know her story. She was a lesbian and, through her whole life process. But one of the things after she decided, I need to stop doing this, and this was her own walk, what was really foundational for me just in general was she was like, oh, God doesn't want to fix me being gay. His first issue with me is my pride. And so that's why I have to look at it too, is we a lot of times formulate our own opinions on what we think needs to be fixed, and God has his own agenda. He has his own way of looking at things where we as a society make our opinions really our God. And I loved that her perspective was, I thought God was going to fix this, and he came in and wrecked me in a whole different way. And so I really try to keep that fresh perspective when I see a student, because it's really easy to see a kid and formulate all your thoughts about him. It's really easy to formulate an opinion because we're human. Our life experience has told us things. No matter what information we're gaining, it's all stuff we've learned. No one can not have an opinion. That's a lie if we say, oh, I don't have an opinion. It's like, somewhere you have an opinion. And so my goal is that when I see a kid, I don't formulate their story in my head.
Right.
I let them tell me who they are. And I gain that relationship with them, because there might be things that I think need to be fixed, and God's working on something else.
Well, our idea is the first thing he wants to fix is he wants to get you straightened up morally.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's like, it's such a bigger thing than that.
It really is.
Sin isn't just a moral issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a heart issue, and he wants our hearts. He wants our hearts to be given to him. And, and so I think you're on the right track there. One of the things that that is exciting to me is that that we share too, is that my relationship with my wife is the way it is because we're so different, not because we're the same.
Yep.
And your relationship with Joel is the same way.
Yeah.
Joel's a very different person
he really
than
is.
you are. What did he say to you when you went through this process of ordination that encouraged you and maybe helped you gain some confidence about where you're going? Because I know he's a big part of your life, and his voice is very strong in your life.
Yeah, and his voice is strong because he uses it so little. So he's a man of few words, which I'm a woman of a lot. So there's a big difference there. When we were doing that prayer time to be ordained, he kind of stopped, and he was really speaking from experiences of where we've gone to maybe more traditional churches or seen, more traditional couples in the community. And you say, hey, like, oh, you're the youth pastors at Renewal. And he's like very quickly to say, I am not the youth pastor, my wife is, because I am. And he's really not. He's not on the payroll, I am. But what he had said to me, kind of speaking of those experiences, was, you second guess yourself, but I can see clearly that God has you for exactly where he wants you. Yeah. And to be able to say that is like, wow, that's really like sure. That's a really sure statement of like, I know God has you where you're supposed to be. And a lot of times I think we struggle with that. Could I be doing more? Should I be doing something else? Did I really hear from God? Am I really where I'm supposed to be? And to have someone who we have relationship together, we've walked through life together, to say, no, I know you're where you're supposed to be, that matters.
Yeah. And it's your husband.
It's my husband.
Who knows you better than anybody.
He does. He knows me really too well.
Well, no, not too well. But I mean, if there was anybody who knew where your weaknesses are, it's him. Yeah. And yet, in spite of all that, he just tells you who you are and affirms your identity in him. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and Joel's pretty great.
He is a great guy.
He is.
So now, because of that, you have some time.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time.
To do what you think is most important for Renewal, most important for these kids. What are you going to spend your time doing?
I think a lot of it is, God told me this summer to level up. And the level up term is a little bit, like, what does that even mean? It's like, well, I play a lot of video games. So there's this level upping in video games where your character, like, he gets new abilities and new powers, right? You're like, So I think God was kind of, right?
This is awesome.
But I think what God was telling me is that you've been stuck in the same place for a long time. And I think that there's this really great idea of like, we invite people in and we do create community and we are comfortable, but it's out of that, having relationship with one another and being vulnerable and being honest and open, that then we go out and give it to other people. And so I heard God say this summer, level up. And what I felt like that meant was, it's time for me to do that, to be more out. Stop going, hey, come to my youth group, come do this thing on Wednesday nights, but really be out in the community. Where are my kids at? Where are they?
And you need time to do that.
I need time to do that. Yeah. And then the other side of it is for my own students, right? They need to be developed up. And so giving time towards that, to say, we're not just going to meet on a Wednesday night and get all filled up and do nothing with it. We need to find, where can we be in our communities to make a difference? Right. So I think a lot of that, changing our mindsets from getting kids in the door to now I want kids to get out of the door. I want them to move on from just a Wednesday night program. So that, again, I mentioned it earlier, volunteers. I need to build up a team that feels like they can be confident to do the things that God has called us to do. I mean, it's a hard demographic. You are walking with these kids in all of the ways of their tough stuff. Being a teenager is hard. And so how are my volunteers dealing with that? How are they walking with these kids and feeling successful? I think a lot of times at churches or even just any program that has volunteers, we ask a lot from our volunteers with no relational gain. We say, go do it, you'll be filled up, it'll be the best. And within like certain relationships, that's a reality. Right. But then on the other side, they're getting burned out because there's no value in, I need to be here, I'm needed. We say, do it because it has to happen, but I want my volunteers to know I love you and I care about you. How are you doing? Because that's what I've felt being a part of a church is, being on staff at churches, at least at Renewal, has been insane because like we start our staff meetings with like a week, like a check-in. How's your week going? I'm like, what? I've never worked for a place that cares. This is insane. And so like being able to bring that into my own team of saying, I care about you. Let's talk about it. Let's hear, like, let's not talk about the students. Let's talk about you and I, because really relationship is where our foundation should lay.
Right. Well, I think this is probably something you can say all those things about yourself. The one thing you can't say about yourself is that I think you're going to become a great leader. I think you're going to probably grow past your job description. And I hope that happens. Yeah. Really, I do. I hope that happens, Mikinzi. I hope you grow way past what everybody expects you to do, because we need you. The body of Christ needs you, and we need your leadership skills. We need your confidence in your relationship with God, but also your willingness to be with people where they're at. And so I'm really glad. I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm thankful. Thank you for the time today and just spending time letting people get to see a little bit about how crazy you are, how beautiful you are, how wonderful you are, and what a good leader you're going to be.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We really hope today's episode was helpful. You'll find more resources and content to connect with other community leaders by going to our website, cityservecowlitz.org. So, it's been a joy to walk with you, and we'll see you soon.